Alright guys, since we have some mix-ups or stances that we need to break down, I'm now back to explain to you guys again. So first off, let's start with Paul's back to 1 string. This string is -12 on block, and you can never try to press buttons after the first hit, because if you do, then you're gonna get launched by the second hit. So the way to deal with this string is to just stay blocking and wait for it to finish. And once it's done, punish it with a 12 frame punisher. In our case, loss 3-4. But here is the tricky part. Paul can massively delay the second hit, and if you wait too much, then you'll be forced to block the whole string. If you block the delayed second hit, Paul will be at a massive +8 frame advantage in your face, and this allows him to do all sorts of nasty stuff after. Like for example, a 50-50 between Demolition Man and Death Fist. So the first way to deal with the delayed second hit of back to 1 is by sidewalking it. And the other way would be to interrupt it. But interrupting it becomes very risky because what if Paul doesn't delay the second hit? Then we get launched. But I found a way to effectively deal with both the normal version and the delayed version. You can tell them apart by just doing a simple backdash after blocking the first hit. Because if Paul just does the normal undelayed version, the second hit will come out immediately after the first hit, and our character won't be able to backdash away. But we're still gonna get to block the second hit and punish Paul for it. And in case Paul goes for the delayed version, then we're gonna get to see our character rise up and backdash away. And once we confirm that, we still have enough time to hit Paul with a fast counter-hitting move. Like for example, a Magic 4 or loss down to 3. But the risk in doing that is if we're slightly late in interrupting Paul, then he can potentially clip us and we get launched instead. So what we can do as law players to play it safe is that we can do loss back 1+2 parry, so that if in case we get hit by Paul, at least it wasn't a counter hit and we take less damage. But it's completely up to you what method you prefer. But I personally would just go for the riskier interrupt attempt for the bigger damage. Okay so we now move on to the next mix-up on the list, which is Paul's down forward 1 into sway. Now if you're not familiar with Paul, he can enter his back sway off his down forward 1. This gives him access to all his sway moves, or in other words, his quarter circle back moves. His options from this are sway 1, which is a very linear counter hit launcher that is safe on block. Sway 2, which is the more common mid option. This is also linear like sway 1. And on hit, this gives Paul a free grounded hit if you forget to hold back upon hitting the ground. Sway 3, which is the only low option, and this has string extensions. Paul will likely use this to go under high strings after getting his down forward 1 blocked. Sway 4, which is the fast homing high, which gives Paul a massive combo on counter hit. Also, this is +1 on block, so Paul can use this for pressure. And finally, sway 1+2, which is a mid launcher that has some high crushing frames. This is minus 14 on block. So the way to deal with this mix-up is to first note that most options can be stepped to the right, mainly sway 1, sway 2, and sway 1 plus 2. But do remember that if Paul decides to delay them a bit, they have the tendency to realign with the immediate sidestep attempts. So in order to step these moves successfully, you have to time your sidestep along with the moves. Aside from those 3 steppable sway options, Paul has a homing high which is sway 4, and a low poke that tracks, which is sway 3. Note that one is a high and one is a low, which means that both moves can be avoided by attempting a low parry. If Paul does the high, you just duck under it, and if Paul does the low, you just parry it. So what about the mids, you say? Because attempting a low parry also makes us duck, which makes us prone to the mids. But remember that all those mids can be stepped. So what we can do here is to attempt a sidestep and immediately attempt a low parry. Very nice, right? Since that seems to be a way to deal with all of the options. But not so fast, because there's a slight problem here. You see, sway 4 requires us to duck immediately after the sidestep. So we only need to do like half of a sidestep before attempting a low parry. So this would mean that if you extend your sidestep by a tiny bit, then you're gonna get clipped by sway 4, because it is quite fast for a move. But at the same time, to dodge sway 1 plus 2, it requires a full sidestep and not just half of a sidestep. So this means that if you want to sidestep and still be able to duck the sway 4 in time, then you run the risk of getting launched by sway 1 plus 2. And if you want to step sway 1 plus 2, you're gonna get clipped by sway 4. But I think that getting hit by sway 4 is a lot better because it will not land as a counter hit, so you're not gonna get launched by it. Unless you're pressing buttons, of course. But it's completely up to you as the player which move you want to avoid. Well, you just gotta look at their tendencies. From my experience myself, I more often find Pauls who do sway 4 a lot more than they do sway 1 plus 2. So before we end this part on Paul's down forward 1 into sway, there's something that I didn't mention. I haven't mentioned that Paul is not limited to just using quarter circle back moves off his sway. Like for example, he can do down forward 1 sway into another down forward 1. Or he can even do down forward 1 sway into the mid homing move, up back 2. Not to mention that he can even cancel the sway into a sidestep by pressing up. So if he does these, then sidestepping into low parry may not work, because that only applies when the Paul player that you're playing is only using quarter circle back moves. Well, that's it. I will not go in depth anymore because I just want to keep this guide simple. Okay, now for Paul's forward forward 2 strings. So first let me introduce you to what moves Paul can do out of this elbow move. First there is forward forward 2-1, which is the mid extension, which is minus 12 on block. And there's also a fake out version of this, when Paul holds back to feint the second hit. Next is the high extension, which is forward forward 2, just frame 1. This one has a ton of pushback, so it allows Paul to set up some stuff. And finally, the low extension, which is forward forward 2-2. Which also has a fake out version, much like the mid extension. And yes, before I forget to mention this, Paul can also do the same moves from fully crouched. So instead of doing forward forward 2, what Paul can do is he can do full crouch down forward 2 instead, and then he has access to the same extensions. So to deal with this, unfortunately there isn't a way to beat all of his options at once. But we have some options that will beat at most 3 of his options, but never all of them. First option that we can do is a hop kick right after blocking the first hit. We can also do a flip kick for more damage, but remember that it is more punishable than a hop kick. This option will stuff out both the fake out versions of forward forward 2-1 and forward forward 2-2. And at the same time, it will also jump over the low hit of forward forward 2-2. But the hop kick will lose if Paul does forward forward 2-1 without faking it out. And also forward forward 2 just frame 1 because the hop kick will whiff, and you know what happens next. Second option that we can do is a sidestep just before we do a hop kick. Now the advantage of this is that the sidestep will dodge the second hit of Paul's forward forward 2-1. And also because we are doing a hop kick immediately after the sidestep, we are still able to jump over the low hit of forward forward 2-2. And if Paul does the fake out version of forward forward 2-2, the hop kick is still in time to hit Paul before he can block. But sidestep into hop kick won't work if first is Paul does forward forward 2 just frame 1. Because we won't be able to step the second hit. But we're still good because we're still gonna get to block the second hit. And next is if Paul does the fake out version of forward forward 2-1. Because we are doing a sidestep before the hop kick will come out too late to hit Paul. So he just blocks it and then we get punished. So now we go to the third option. Okay, so out of Paul's options, the one that we haven't dealt with yet is his forward forward 2 just frame 1, which is the high extension. Of course, the default way to deal with this move is to duck the second hit, and then punish with a while standing move. But the bad thing about doing a while standing move is that if Paul does, let's say, forward forward 2-2, then we're gonna get launched by the low. So what I suggest doing is to do a hop kick or flip kick instead, to dodge the low hit of forward forward 2-2. And note that this will also stuff out a fake out version of forward forward 2-2. But this option will lose if Paul does forward forward 2-1, which is the mid extension, because we're ducking right before we do the hop kick. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. I really hope that you learned something from this little breakdown that I made for Paul's most common mix-ups. It took me a while really to come up with everything that I need to put in this video, so if you appreciate my effort in making these kinds of videos, leave a like, comment down below, or subscribe. And yes, if you feel like you want to support the channel, you can send me any amount that you wish. If you do, then thank you. I really appreciate it. Doing so will help me upgrade my gear to bring out more of these videos. You can find my donation link on my YouTube channel page. And once again, I hope you enjoyed the video.